Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast presented by Chick-fil-A. Guys, Clemson just swept South Carolina. Clemson Hoops is rocking and rolling, and we have spring ball observations. We have plenty to talk about here. David, with his camo hat, in honor of what, David? What are you celebrating over there?
Well, just the fact, we were down in Columbia last night. Clemson beat South Carolina 8-2, wins the rivalry series, sweeps the Gamecocks for the second time in 2 years, for the third time in 4 years. They've won the season series 8 out of the last 11 years. And so had this on a shelf and decided, hey, just in honor of Clemson baseball and the winning streak and beating South Carolina again, thought I would show it off here on the show. Big weekend, and this is a Clemson team that's now moved up into the top 5 in a couple of rankings. D1 still has them at 11. Grayson, we've talked about it over the past couple of weeks. We feel like this team would hit. The big question would be pitching, but we saw a lot of really good pitching out of the Tigers this weekend.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Darden on Saturday. It really turned into a pitcher's duel between he and Jacob McCoy. And it almost followed the similar script on Sunday in Columbia, where you just have this really fast-paced game. You're really not able to scratch any offense, and then Clemson makes the opportune plays where South Carolina couldn't, and it starts with Colin Priest, 3-run homer in Columbia, whether it's Cam Cannarella in the 6th inning in Greenville and a floor field. So it really felt to me like the Tigers were opportunistic and South Carolina wasn't. I think that's what makes good teams – it makes average teams average and makes great teams great. And so we saw that difference in this series. And it's a big thing for Bakich. He noted in both of his post-game press conferences that it's such a big deal for this community, and he continues to hone on that. He's talked to us about that on the show, just about the importance of really getting this going. David, the environment yesterday and in Saturday I thought were a lot of fun for baseball fans, especially after they raised the windows in the press box. You could hear a lot of chirping on both sides, and that's just what makes this rivalry series so unique. But what also is unique is I think Clemson's starting to find a groove with this pitching staff and really putting together some quality innings. What impressed me the most is the resilience. You had Darden and Legornik fall into a couple holes where you leave a couple runners on, and in Darden's case, almost was in danger of giving up a grand slam. No outs, climbs out of that, and Clemson rocks and rolls from there. So there's some momentum for this group to be able to work with against some of the bigger dogs in this conference when it comes to ACC play.
Like what they're doing, we kind of knew it was going to be Darden and Titsworth on Saturday, or as somebody around here was calling it, Dards and Tits. Can we say that on the podcast? Anyway, that's what somebody was saying. We kind of knew that's what it would be going in. You knew you were going to get Canuck and Malstead on Friday, and then last night, here we go. It's going to kind of be how. I was told it would be what the score was, who was winning. Joe Allen comes in. Nathan Dvorsky hadn't pitched, thought we might see him. Joe Allen comes in, 3 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts. That's a theme for the weekend. South Carolina struck out 35 times and only got 15 hits. That is not a recipe for success. And now, look, I'm not a Gamecock baseball guy. I don't watch them a lot. Not the same program that it once was. This is a program that's probably in that strong SEC. They're going to struggle this year. And Clemson also striking out a whole lot this weekend, 37 times. That's not good. In fact, I was texting a baseball guy of mine. I was like, hey, some of these Clemson hitters act like they've never seen a slider before. But they settled in. They stayed patient. They get the runs in the 8th. They tack on 4 more, in the 9th against South Carolina's closer. And that's kind of what you have to do. They never trailed against South Carolina. Jumped out to leads, when they needed to, and they take the rivalry series. And so now we look ahead. 2 games this week. Weather may impact it. USC Upstate and Greenville at floor. You've got a midweek game against Presbyterian at Doug Kingsmore on Wednesday, weather permitting. 3-game series against Davidson before kind of getting into ACC play the next weekend. A lot of fun for Clemson baseball right now.
Yeah, there's a lot, especially if you're in town and you want to tailgate. Maybe go get some Chick-fil-A from our good friend Herb Tyler. That's just throwing out there. Shout out to him. But yeah, some more home action for this team. A lot of momentum to ride on. And I think for this group in particular, there's certainly a momentum. And you could feel it yesterday. And I think it was pointed out to us on several occasions. It could just be a standard double or a standard single. Guy gets on play and just roars out some emphatic. Just it was almost primal in that sense, where you're just every hit meant so much, and I think that's what made it so fascinating. Is the minute things where maybe Canarella hits a single against Davidson, he's gonna go to the plate and do his thing, and it'll be fine. He hits that against South Carolina, and he's pumping his chest and he's flexing his muscles, and you're just feeling it over in the press box on both sides. Where man, this is just it means a lot. And you heard Colin Priest after the game, and you can check out the clips on TigerNet on our YouTube page, saying that this is some of the loudest environments that he's been a part of, and one of the best rivalries he's been a part of. It's just sort of fun to have the transfer portal play a role in this, where new players will come in, like Dominic Listy will come in and have an impact. Colin Priest has one of the bigger plays last night, recording this on Monday morning, and it's just to see their perspective and go, whoa, this is legit. Like, this is sort of how it's going to be moving forward in my Clemson career. So, David, a lot certainly to unpack with this group. Momentum certainly on their side, and they got a lot more success to wrangle out as we start to trickle into the season. But do we want to start by talking some spring ball? We got that introduced to us on Friday. If you have any lasting thoughts on baseball before we move on.
No, baseball. We're gonna find out more about this team. I always say, as a baseball guy, college baseball, I really like to get 20, 25 games into a season to get a feel for what this team is. Pitching was good this weekend. Again, don't think South Carolina is very good at the plate. A lot of lack of discipline. They're going to face better hitting teams in the ACC. We'll see how that is. But yeah, spring football got started. We'll be back out there today. Coach Sweeney, very gracious, let us have 7 periods the other day, which kind of allowed me to walk around. But you and I both talked about how, this time last year in spring, and then you fast forward to the fall, there just wasn't this level of intensity either time. Excitement to begin practice, yes. Excitement to get going, yes. But intensity, and what struck me, and I wrote about it, I kept hearing Lonnie Galloway, who came over from North Carolina. He's working with Tyler Grisham and the wide receivers. Him and Kyle Richardson, they were talking, and hey, 30%, not going full speed, 30%. But the players were wanting to go. They were wanting to go. Wade Wood said, man, it was hard to hold back. I got tickled at Kyle one time. There's a youngster who is working out with the wide receivers and tight ends who played at Daniel. He has been a student manager off and on, started out last year wanting to walk onto the football team. I think he went back to being a student manager when they needed help, back out in a uniform, and he kind of let a pass slip through his fingers, and Kyle said, hey, you do that again and you're going to go back to making copies. I love to hear stuff, like that. You hear Tom Allen over there with the microphone going, lasso the legs and kill the motor. And he's talking about, we're going to stop the run. We're going to tackle better. This Clemson team was an atrocious tackling team a year ago. So much fun. So much. I told you weren't around back in the day. This had pre-2018 and 2018 vibes to it.
Yeah, so it felt like there was a different juice to it. I joked that Dabo Sweeney in his press conference, it was like he drank 2 Red Bulls before coming onto the stage to give us the sort of rundown before we got to go to practice. But the observations, it just felt like a team, a little bit more cohesion to it, a little bit more focus. I remember the first fall practice in the summer, and I think I talked to you about it, talked to a couple other colleagues on the beat, thinking, does this feel a little lackadaisical? Does this feel a little slow to you? Mm-hmm. Just sort of like they're happy to be there, sure, but that's really it. There's not an extra juice to it. They're sort of missing the sauce. And you got to Friday, and things were, like you said, they're having to tell the guys to slow down. There was certainly an energy. Sweeney relayed it that this is sort of a team that has tasted what it's like to be in the postseason now. And now there's been some changes. You add a couple pieces in the portal. I think they've probably been feeling the excitement since January, and they've been ready to get onto the field and take these next steps forward. And so Friday, felt like a lot of more added focus. And so you saw that shift in vibes and energy. Tom Allen was an interesting watch just to see him be this overseer and walk around. Ben Boulware said some things we can't repeat on this podcast, or YouTube will demonetize this video. But he was out there bringing some energy. It just felt like a little bit more of a cohesive unit. than I've seen since, and I've been doing this is my third spring practice. This was the most fluid I've seen this group. A lot more assurance than looking around asking, where do we go now? What do we do? This felt like a group that's been there before. And I think that's a significant advantage to get this spring practice where it's more not of formality, but they've been there. They've done that.
I think it's a lot of new voices too. Lonnie Galloway, Mike Houston, Tom Allen, Thomas Allen, Ben Bulwer's out there. He's able to speak now. You still have John Gross out there, Taj Boyd taking a little bit of a bigger role. Matt Luke now really settling in as Clemson's offensive line coach. Dabo's hires Chris Rumpf over at defensive end. The hires from outside the program are making big changes, and it's just good to see. And I'll tell you, there were some players that kind of stood out to me. Will Helt, of course, the transfer, defensive end, a little bit lean, big wingspan, looks like he can play. Really impressed with Peter Woods. Too heavy last year. Wasn't a defensive end. Really needs to stay at defensive tackle. He looked a lot better. Some of these kids, Tristan Smith looks the part at wide receiver. Going to have to work on the hands, but, man, the upside is there. And I think if, you give him a spring practice and get him in the fall, he's going to be a guy that can really help you in the red zone. Jeremiah Alexander, the linebacker, looked a little bit leaner than 245, which is great. That means he's carrying it. Sammy Brown still looks like that athletic freak that we know he is. The defense, I think, is going to be just fine. Jack Smith kind of settled in at punter, one of the things I wanted to see. And, at running back, it was Adam Randall, a taller kind of a running back. We were talking about this yesterday. You have a kid and he's growing up, and all of a sudden he breaks that 5'10", 5'11" barrier, and it's like, well, you're a wide receiver. Oh, you're not growing, so now you're going to be a running back. Adam Randall's a taller running back, played wide receiver. Could be a nice change of pace. Really liked what I saw out of David Eziomume. I think he's got a chance to come on strong. If he pass protects, he can play a lot. And then Gideon Davidson, Dabo said that the freshman had a 40-inch vertical leap. I'm not sure you and I together could go 40 inches on the vertical leap. I mean, maybe we could try. That's impressive. And then when he's out there, smooth. It's kind of like watching Bryant Wesco last year run routes, and you go, okay, not completely polished, but smooth, and there's so much to work with. He reminds me of another 9 that we saw, not Wayne Gallman, who was more of a physical runner, but Travis Etienne. Just the way that he moves, the way he kind of gets into that top gear a little bit, and they kept having to tell him, whoa, the other day, hey, slow down. A lot to be excited about. A lot of really good pieces with this program.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bryant Wesco. Watching him last year, you sort of got that's a dude. That's a guy. That's someone that can go out there and contribute on day one. And Sweeney talked about it in his presser that Gideon Davidson's someone with the complete package. He's a really special talent. And you could see it in terms of just physique and stature. You almost, if you don't know how tall Adam Randall is, you might mistake him for the guy, because we know Adam Randall's this like physical specimen when it comes to just the size that he has. And you're like, oh, wait. That's not Adam. And so it's interesting to see how this operates. And you mentioned Will Helt. I was trying to locate him when they were stretching just so I could get the first look of where he's at in a Clemson uniform. And he looks like he could kill somebody. He's a big dude. If you hired him as a security guard, you'd probably feel pretty confident rolling around. You could probably spat at some people, and you'd feel pretty good that Helt's got your back there. I think I had a couple people walk up to me and go, have you seen Helt? And how big he looks. And you just look at the tree trunk arms and the feet. His arms are probably as big as I am. And so it's just impressive to see what kind of guy they're getting out of the portal. Tristan Smith got a lot of coaching from Lonnie Galloway in that first, I think the session you and I watched together, where he's not going to blow you away with his speed, but I think that what Clemson has envisioned for him for this offense is sort of a big-bodied receiver that if we need a 50-50 ball, he can make it an 80-20. And provide an extra element to this offense. So it'll be interesting to see how he grasps the concepts, rolls with a offense that's really been together for a couple years now. I watched Wesco and Moore a little bit. They look quicker. Moore looks a little more built. in his arms and his legs. Looks like he's been spending the offseason in the weight room. Wesco looks a bit bigger. So it'll be interesting to see how these puzzle pieces come together. But this is a group that feels like it's got continuity on their side. And we'll see how that all comes together with a couple new additional pieces.
Well, and if it looks like I am a little bit distracted, it is. I told you this morning, there was going to be a Clemson Board of Trustees meeting tomorrow. So a little bit of breaking news, that looks like the Clemson and Florida State and the ACC are going to end their lawsuits. Clemson and Florida State are going to get a bigger piece of the pie. I was, kind of known about this since yesterday. Pete Thamel breaks the news. We were talking about it last night, on the way home from Columbia about what this could mean. It's big, and I'm sitting here texting people and, trying to figure out what my morning is going to look like tomorrow. But we knew this was coming. I wrote about it the other day. It looks like they're going to settle the lawsuits, and Clemson will kind of be in place for now. I am anxious to hear, is there a grant of rights piece to all of this? That's going to be big. But if Clemson can kind of, get out of that $40 million deal and kind of get up into 60 and 70, then all of a sudden you can be really competitive. And look, Clemson, there's more things Clemson needs to do. I don't know whether that's selling, the naming rights to the athletic district and getting a corporate sponsorship. But with the way that NIL is going, rev share, that's going to be starting soon. You're going to have $22.5 million there. Clemson's going to need some corporate sponsorship. So if you're a rich cat out there and you own a company, Clemson's going to have to be a part of that. It's wild times. I told somebody the other day, I can remember when I just covered practices and games, and now all of a sudden it's NIL and lawsuits and rev shares and contracts and, NFL general managers coming to work for college football programs. Kevin Kelly, what we had talked about with him and the way he's going to kind of be taking a look at Clemson's roster. So looks like a Board of Trustees meeting tomorrow, and we're going to have a whole lot more on that. So, just some breaking news. We'll have more on what we see out of practice today. It'll be a second look. We'll have more on that later. But before we duck out and before I get to figuring out what I need to do next, other than take a shower for the first time today, let's talk about Brad Brownell and the Fighting Brownells going up to John Paul Jones Arena in Virginia, a house of horrors. I can remember, seeing games up there. Tony Bennett, a great defensive coach. And, you get with 8 minutes left in the second half, and Clemson has 32 points or 34. And this is a game that in the past you think Clemson probably would have lost. Hunter brothers combined for 11 points. You make one three-pointer. Not a lot going right for you. And you still win by double digits, score 48 in the paint. Chef with a career high. It's a team that just keeps finding a way.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's always been that formula where we talk about games that they should have lost in the past. And it just feels like a different era, different vibe with this group. And I think they made one three-pointer the entire game. And at one point, they were 1 of 10. And I think that might have been the final stat. Somebody can correct me if I'm incorrect there. But this team, like you alluded to, it continues to win in different ways. Ian Shefflin's been on a tear since Wednesday against Notre Dame. It sets a career high in points with 24, and then follows that up with a birthday performance against the Cavaliers. And Virginia has been playing better basketball as of late in the last couple of weeks. So they were a team to look out for. And for Clemson, this is going to be a continued chase for a higher seed. We know they're going to be in March Madness. We know they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. It's just a matter of where. And the ACC crown is still alive. If Duke or Louisville falters this week, Duke is Wake Forest tonight. They're going to be desperate for their NCAA tournament hopes, trying to figure out where they stand in the big picture. I believe Lenardi has Wake Forest as a first four out as of this morning. So there's going to be a lot of desperation. That matchup could be another loss for the Blue Devils on deck potentially. If you're a Clemson fan, certainly watch that. But I think what impresses me about this team is there's no strict formula that they follow. One game they could be raining three-pointers down from the logo. One night it could be Victor Locken averaging 20 points per game against the Blue Bloods in the ACC.
Locken Ness monster. Get it right.
As Sweeney pointed out repeatedly with his nickname, because he got a big chuckle out of the room. So he was like, okay, I got to keep rolling with this. The Locken Ness monster can roll out. You could have Chase Hunter, who I did get an update on this morning with Brad Brownell, said that the injury that he suffered in practice about 2 weeks ago,
The
was a calf injury,
Yep.
getting better. and said that he's receiving treatment daily. They're going to get another update this afternoon, and it would be probably, in my estimation, that Hunter's probably going to be, in terms of setting up plays for him, in terms of minutes, I would imagine that the final 2 games are going to be an incredibly limited set, where usually you have Chase Hunter being the decisive attacker, heading to the rim, heading a lot more of the offense. I think that could slow down till the ACC tournament just to see how that treatment necessarily responds. Brownell's always been pretty smart about that, especially where this team stands. I think that I could see that Jake Highbrader gets more minutes, who's been playing a lot better. Del Jones got a lot more minutes against Virginia. So the guard play behind Hunter has improved, and I think that will probably give him more of a reason to give Hunter a little bit of a break.
I guess you asked Brad this, but did he mention, I mean, Clemson's already, wrapped up a top 4 seed.
I think for him,
to say, well, did he think about maybe sitting Chase for 2 games or a game?
I think he's always going to try to win, especially with what's on the. He mentioned the importance of getting that ACC regular season title, and that's still in the cards for this group. And if Duke loses tonight, Clemson wins out, and I think there's a weird 3-way tiebreaker that our colleague Will Vandervoort explained to us, and that it would be sort of considered co-ACC champions. He's got all that, and he's got knowledge stored in the back of his head and then some. It's pretty crazy, the library of knowledge that you guys hold. I'm such a young buck still. But this is, I think, a Clemson group that Hunter probably playing 25 instead of 35 minutes is probably the correct way to go, especially when your guard play is increasing like that. So I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a Tiger fan. I think they're just trying to be as precautionary as possible, especially given that he will be their best option heading into the NCAA tournament. So we'll see. There's some things that I'm thinking about doing, like a burning questions series where we try to answer some questions for you guys heading into March Madness. We'll see. Stay tuned. We have a lot, David, on deck this month.
Somebody sent me a message this morning and said, hey, I'm coming up and I'll be at the last gymnastics meet on the 14th. Would love to see you there, unless you have something else. And I'm going, yeah, we've got pro day the 13th. Clemson will play in Charlotte that night. We will make the drive from Clemson after pro day up to Charlotte for that. And then if Clemson wins, probably going to be either a 7 or 9:30 game Friday night in Charlotte on the 14th. Charlotte on the 15th. Spring football going on. Scrimmages. Softball. Let's talk about it really quick. 12 wins in a row, right? How about Allison Kwolek and lacrosse? Now, look, they stole a couple of recruits from Syracuse that were top, 10 kids, including one that's one of the best in the country, whose dad is the lacrosse coach at that storied Stony Brook program, the men's lacrosse coach. Steals a couple of recruits from Syracuse, goes on the road, beats a top, Notre Dame team, and then goes on the road and beats Syracuse Saturday 9-8. Come on, that's number 5 in the country. Somebody sent me a text in the program and said, hey, lacrosse is a Southern sport now. Maybe it is, but Allison's certainly building something. A lot of the women's sports, ACC tournament for women's basketball, and Sean Poppy. Nikki, my wife, voted for the coach of the year this morning. Sean Poppy got her vote. Considering the roster that Sean was dealt, the hand that he was dealt, some of the upsets that he pulled, certainly very deserving of that. So don't want to leave them out. A lot going on and a lot more to go. Looks like I've got to get involved in this Clemson ACC deal now. We have practice this afternoon, baseball later this week, and oh my goodness, I love it. Love it.
It's awesome. It's going to be fun. And this is what this is crossover season at its true primal insanity, where we're all over the place. And so if you want to be all over the place too, you should stick with TigerNet.com for all the updates. We have baseball, basketball, football, spring practice. The Elite Retreat is this Saturday, so we'll be having stories. Recruits are ready to rock and roll. And it's a big weekend on that front. We have a list dropping either Friday or Saturday, depending on what we decide to do that. We got a lot. So, guys, thank you as always for tuning in, and subscribe for more chaotic podcasts from David and I, where we're talking, we're rocking and rolling. David's hat has disappeared because it's camo. Thought I'd make that joke as we end it. But, guys, thank you as always for tuning in. Subscribe for more. God bless y'all, and